Okay, hello everybody. My name is James Dearsley. I'm the founder of the Digital Marketing Bureau. I have decided to run a Hangout on Air based on my total aim to get in the Guinness World Book of Records to have the most number of people with Google Glass on in one Hangout. And I think based on the number of people we've got, I think Andrew's got them, David's got them, Liza and Patrick. So that's about 80% of the panel. So I'm pretty pleased with that.
I can put pairs on if you want, and we'll get a quorum.
Yeah.
Dave, knowing you, you'll probably have one pair here, then you'll have one pair wrapped around your ears, one on your hat. You know, just so you.
The only way to show other people, right?
Yeah.
Well, look, the whole point on this is just really it's an informal look at the AWE 2014. I was unfortunate enough not to go, and I was gutted. And so a couple of weeks ago, I spoke to Alex, who's on the panel with me here, and just said, look, you and I should just have a chat over a hangout because Alex is in Ireland, and just give me an update, give me a feedback. What was it like? What was good? What was bad? What were the keynotes like? What was the technology like? What was new? What was exciting? And really, that's what brought this about. But it just so happened yesterday. I just thought, well, hey, let's put it out to the rest of the wider world on Google Plus and see who wants to have a chat. And this is why we're all here. So it's hopefully we'll just have a little chat. And if you guys are on Google Plus watching this, just don't hesitate to stick some comments and questions or whatever you have in the comment box, and we'll try and drag them in here as well. And we'll just go from there. So what I thought I'd just do is why don't we just get some introductions going. So Patrick, who's on the bottom right down here, do you want to lead the way and just say who you are and what you do and so on and so forth?
Sure, yeah. Patrick O'Shaughnessy. I am the CTO of AugmentedReality.org, as well as I run my own company, Patched Reality. We do custom augmented reality and digital eyewear applications. At the show, I was focusing on what was most exciting for me, which is the new eyewear that's come out. Obviously Google Glass, but also Epson has a new eyewear, and OptinVent and Vuzix, and so I give an overview of all the various SDKs that are available to develop for those. So that's my shtick. That's what I do. Thanks for having me.
No, that's fine, Patrick. No problem at all. It's a real honour to have you on. And Liza.
Hi,
can you hear me?
Liza here with Gear Tech LLC. I'm working on applications for glass right now, and took part in the AWE hackathon with David Lee.
And I think you guys did rather well, which will probably come on to later. And David, go ahead, go for it. Let's hear about you.
Hey, my name is David Lee, and I'm a CEO at GPOP. GPOP is a firm that works on a Google Glass application right now. And we had a chance to, I and Eliza actually knew each other before the hackathon. We had a chance to compete in this event, a 2-day event. And we actually created an application on Epson Moverio device, and we came out on top. So thanks for having me here. And I'll try to share everything that I've learned from both attendee side and from the hackathon hackers side. Thank you.
Guy to talk to.
Yeah, go for it, Andrew. Let's now that you've settled in a Wi-Fi hotspot, go for it. If you're there, Andrew, can you hear us? Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you. Sorry about that.
No,
Andrew Adams with One Devices. Also with Turnkey Communications for the last 30 years, but I'm on a joint venture with a company called Aeronet. And what we're doing is we're developing Google Glass application for aviation virtual assistants.
That's cool. Good stuff. And finally, the root of all evil to why this all came about. Alex, go for it.
Yeah, hi everybody. It's Alex Gibson here from Dublin. I met James at the inaugural Augmented Reality Marketing Conference, which I hosted here in Dublin, Ireland, just in the month of April. I was at AWE last year. I am an academic. I head up a tourism department at the Dublin Institute of Technology, and I'm very interested in augmented reality from the tourism applications perspective. And secondary to that, very interested in the business side, the return on investment of augmented reality, how it works from a marketing perspective. That was what led me to create the Augmented Reality Marketing Conference. Did we get Dave Lorenzini as well, James?
Yeah, I think he's probably just disappeared off to go and get all of his multitude of glass devices and fancy things and all this sort of stuff. And he'll probably come back on in a minute and wow us with some various things. So there we go. But well, I'll tell you what. Let's if I can, because you guys are far more techy than I. I mean, I got invited to Alex conference to be a speaker because of my marketing background. I mean, I run a marketing company, and we specialize in using all the technology, but fundamentally, I look at the application of the technology rather than the technology itself. So, I mean, you know, Liza and David, I bow down to your knowledge of what you guys do, because it's like if someone was talking Spanish to me, then I would be about as clueless as I am with the sort of stuff that you guys do. But I'm fascinated to hear about what it is you're doing. But why don't we just start off with the sort of the simple stuff and just say, you know, how was it? How was AWE? Did it live up to your expectations? Was it as good as you hoped it to be?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. In what way, Patrick? What was good about it?
I just thought that there was just such a great energy at the show this year, and it just it seems like the show is kind of, I hate to use the words growing up, but there was just, you know, just all the new hardware that was there was particularly exciting, and the fact that everyone was kind of talking about real world uses of the technology, and it was, you know, I thought you know, some of the keynotes were just amazing. Like, you know, MIT was showing off their Wear script and their physical interaction with robotic displays. It was just awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I think coming from it last year to this year, there were a number of things that I saw as differences. One was, I think Patrick's alluded to it there, more and more wearables on display, not just glass, but Moverio. I was also really impressed with the Cortex, which is a company called Sulon Technologies, a Canadian company. I don't know if anyone else got to try their kit, but I thought it was really interesting how they have a technology that maps in 3D and then it enables one to immerse yourself in a virtual or augmented reality instantly. So I thought that was really interesting. And I think, as Patrick said, I think there was a little bit more grown-up approach. I think more and more companies were having to articulate a business case for their products, their technology, and I think that was good to see. As was said there a moment ago, I think the keynotes were very strong. Robert Scoble, I think, was really strong in the idea of contextualizing AR, understanding how AR is used in a consumer's life and in a particular day. I think that's all music to the ears of the business community and marketing community, because they need to see how does this technology fit into consumers and add value to their lives. So I saw quite a big difference in the space of just 1 year.
That's good. I think it's interesting to know that I think you've both mentioned the world of grown up. I think that's a fascinating point to have made. But Patrick, I just want to come back before I go into the keynotes, because keynotes, I mean, Christ, there were nearly 160 keynotes, which I found fascinating. You mentioned the hardware.
Yeah.
What was it? What caught your eye there? I mean, obviously, you said at the start that was something you were really interested in.
Yeah, I mean, mostly the eyewear was what really caught my eye. I mean, there was the Moverios were pretty impressive. They could stereographic see-through. Athere, I was really impressed with their eyewear. Of course, Meta was there as well. OptinVent has a really interesting take on you know, and they're all different and interesting in their own ways. You know, like OptinVent was, I thought they had made some really interesting choices, making it so that you can, you know, see the eyewear, you know, see through in your line of sight, but also flip it up or flip it down rather, so that it's out of your field of view. Athere was doing some just amazing. Their eyewear was great. It had a great field of view, and also they had pretty amazing hand tracking capabilities. So all the different vendors had kind of their own spin on what you know, what makes good eyewear, and it's just interesting to see. It was just really interesting to me to see the different takes, and you know, it's going to be a while, I think, before we have kind of the iPhone of eyewear that everyone emulates and just standardizes on. So it's just fun times, really.
It's really one of the main draws of the show is to be able to try on all of these things at once in one place.
Yeah,
it's kind of an AR and an HMD show all in one, which is unique. And the eyewear kind of fell into two classes, right? You have stuff that's out there today, like Google Glass and the Epson Moverio, which Epson showed really well. And you have these things that are available today. You can buy the Vuzix there. You could you have this class of eyewear that's hitting the market, right? And then you have what's coming with the Loomis and like Patrick said, the OptiVent stuff is beautiful. The way it switches from AR to a reference display, and the Meta stuff coming. So there's really a couple of classes of hardware there. And next year, you'd expect to see the ones that were coming in their finished form shipping as well, and the ones that are coming more had a bent towards full face or full field of view AR instead of just referential display. But next year you'll also see tens of thousands of units shipped from Vuzix to people in manufacturing, industrial, different kinds of places like that, and you'll see a lot more adoption in factory floors and in hospitals and across the world. It's all happening. It's great.
So the interesting thing about this expo event that I experienced was, you guys had a hackathon before the event, and the same those people that you guys talking about, like Epson's, Vuzix, OptiInvent, they were actually sponsoring the hackathon as well, meaning that the hackers, like the software developers, we actually had a chance to look into their SDK and look into their developing environment. This is totally different than just going to an expo to a floor and try something on just looking at a hardware perspective. It gave us user experience designers and programmers to look into how these are different, and if we make it device agnostic application, how do we need to be prepared for this? Because we understand the wave is coming. However, it's really hard for us to learn all these new devices because of the price and availability. So it kind of gave us an opportunity to look into how we need to be prepared.
So let me put this question out to you guys. Which was your favorite device out of all of them? I mean, obviously there are so many coming out, and this is a concern of mine actually, because I always try and look at the consumer every single time. And funny enough, at Alex's conference over in Dublin, one of my big slides was a picture of a 55-year-old woman from the north of England, and I said, this is who has to get the buy-in from this stuff, because these are the consumers that will want to be using it, and that is where the mass consumerism and the mass purchase. So if it's not the price, which funny enough, Dave and I had a very, very animated discussion about price points the other day, it's got to be thinking of the consumer. But from your perspective, what was the device that you feel had the most potential? And shall I start with Andrew? Is that fair?
Sure. What was the question again? I only heard half of it.
What was your favorite device that you saw in terms of eyewear?
I'm going to have to say Google Glass, because it's more along the lines of what is practical in the market today. And since I took marketing in junior college, it's something that I can work with now and sell now. But I do see Epson, Moverio, and Meta glasses as big contenders in the near future.
Yeah, I want to come on to Meta in a minute, actually. But and Dave, what about you? What did you think?
You're talking to me. Yeah, okay, sorry. We actually hacked on Moverio BT200, and when I actually first tried it, I was blown away because I'm a designer, and because I don't have to actually get into the glass UX paradigm. It was more open for me. But in terms of the fashion has to be good. So from fashion perspective, I have to pick glass because that's something I really wear in the public. However, the hardware and the responsiveness of a device, I like the Epson better. So in a nutshell, having Epson inside a glass look, I think that's kind of my choice.
Just amalgamate them all together. That's pretty cool. And Liza, what about you?
I definitely have to second that as far as using the Epson Moverio. It was an amazing device. However, one thing to consider is use case scenario. So Epson Moverio has a very different use case scenario. It's probably not going to be that 85-year-old lady using the Epson on a daily basis or something like that. So I think application is very important to consider when you're thinking about which device you're going to pick as your favorite. However, I was very impressed with the Epson, and I think it's come a long way. It was a really amazing experience to be able to get hands-on with these different devices. I think also the Optimum Aura it's very prototype right now, but I think it has a lot of potential for the future, and I think it might be sort of that in-between device between glass and the Epson. And I hope to see kind of more on that one.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I just want to pick up on something. Dave and Andrew, thanks for the chat messages, by the way, on the thing coming through. Sadly, I can't display YouTube. This is the irony of Google+. I can't share a YouTube clip and show it to everybody here because I will get stung for copyright issues. So, which is ever so ironic. And even more ironic is even if it was my video, which I'd uploaded into YouTube, I'd still get done for copyright on my own video. So there's still some privacy, little legal issues going on in there. But thanks for that anyway.
How many people saw the happy video I did? The little summary.
No, I didn't see it.
I did see it. It was fun. I saw it. Yeah, it was a good overview.
Well, I'll tell you what, Andrew, if we want to post it in the event page afterwards, I'd love to have a look at that. And
yeah, feel free to go ahead and do it.
And yeah, I'll let you know. Don't you worry. And Patrick, what about you? What was your top device?
Yeah, I would say in terms of consumer, I would say probably none of them other than glass probably for this year are really even targeted at consumer. I would say. I'd say the closest, from a fashion standpoint, would probably be what Loomis was showing off. It was the closest to like actual glasses. I was most impressed by the Athere, though, in terms of just the whole package. Not necessarily from a consumer standpoint. I think more from an industrial enterprise standpoint. I thought that their optics were great, on par with the Loomis and the Meta. But then also I thought that their hand tracking, their gesture control was just really impeccable, even better than the Meta that I tried. And then actually one of the eyewear manufacturers I was most impressed with wasn't actually even at the show. I had a chance to see them after the show, which was Osterhout Design Group, and they have some pretty amazing stuff as well. And that's about all I can say about it, but it actually was probably most impressive of anything I saw at the show. Unfortunately, they weren't at the show, but I assume that you'll see them very soon, and most likely at the next show.
It's a shame, isn't it? I mean, if there were that good and they weren't at the show, it's a shame they weren't there. But
yeah, well, they're not making any noise yet, so. But pretty impressed.
And Mr. Lorenzi, what did you think?
So the Google Glass still has the best user experience when it comes to utility and voice control and things like that. It's amazing. And the best full field of view stuff and form factor, the Optivent, once they get cooking, either them or whoever they end up selling their patents to will just crush it on the utility of having both the reference display down low and then the full kind of face AR up high. And again, a lot of the eyewear came down to the experience, and the experience had a lot to do with how you control it. So the Get Myo guys were there, the Myo armband guys were there at getmyo.com. Amazing experience to have this thing. You can basically snap, close a fist, and turn up and down volume on something you're listening to, or things like that. And after wearing glass for a while, one of the toughest things is just the control of poking at your head when you really are using it actively. And so some of there was a ring manufacturer there as well, and that's going to contribute to the experience with the eyewear. So really it's these control schemes and Gestures were still tough, but it's really going to be the overall experience. If you're putting eyewear into a factory floor right now, I'd still look at the Vuzix 100s, where you can just clip it on to eyewear and have a pick display, do your stuff, and get in and out. That was a really nice bright display with good graphics and everything else. So.
Yeah, I just want to bring up the this Mayo armband that you mentioned. Let me just screen share this for a second. Did you guys see this? Did you all see this? Because Dave and I were talking about it the other day, and it sounded fantastic. Dave, do you just want to just talk it through and just let us know how it all sort of works? I think you can probably see my desktop now. Is that right?
Yeah. So basically, it looks like a sweatband or something that you wear around your forearm, and it reads the electrical signals going through your muscles. So they're going to have it's got a accelerometer, so it knows where you're pointing, number one, and then it's got gestures that it can understand. I think sign language folks are really going to crush it here, but you have by snapping was by far the most magical experience. Snapping means something that you define to your program or your application, and then the thing that's going to take a lot of the attention is trigger fingers, right? They say they're not going to call it trigger fingers, but basically you can be sitting here and blasting aliens while you're watching them dissolve in your eyewear. So it's you can wear two, one on each arm, and use them together. And it's really they're going to start shipping here in another month for the alpha developer kits, and the public release is September. So if you go to getmayo.com, they got more information there. But it's a good way to go.
Sounds great. I love the fact of blasting aliens while looking at the telly. That sounds right up my street. And Dave, you mentioned a ring. How did that work? I'm struggling to work how that sort of.
I think it's Node, N-O-D.
I see.
Yep.
Andrew, you're doing this with your finger. I presume you're saying it's
Right.
Textual, right?
Right. You wear the finger on your finger here, and then you move it with your thumb like a mouse.
I've
And then
seen
you
that.
tap on it.
Yeah. N-O-D-E, right?
That's hellonod.com, is that it? Yeah, hellonod.com if you want to show that. Well, I think they pronounce it Node.
Let's have a little look. And what was it about it, Dave, that you liked? What was the main thing about it?
Price.
Price.
$79.
Just the natural user interface. Anything that keeps your hands off your head or waving like an Italian while you're using HMDs, it's a big help.
So it's this thing here, right?
Yeah,
That's it. Yep.
Man, that is sweet, isn't it? Hey?
it really is. I played around with it.
Let me just blue box that. There you go.
And if you've had any experience with the Leap or the other camera tracking of your hands and things, it's still got a ways to go, given that your hands have to be in a certain volume in front of you and everything else. But these wearable kind of interfaces combined with the glasses, and again, glasses that don't look like this, glasses that look like your Oakleys and your Ray-Bans, and that's when the public is gonna embrace this stuff in a crazy way.
Dave, you've talked a lot, I know, at the conference in Dublin. You used the word friction to describe the challenges that people have, i.e. anything that can reduce friction is going to lead to much greater adoption, and all the things we've just been talking about. I haven't seen that node, but that's another example of a technology that reduces friction for consumers.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's ways to overcome this initial friction of enticing someone to load your AR application, to start it up, point it at a marker, wait for it to engage, and then experience it. That's the friction that we're talking about. But there's ways to entice people to do that, as long as the reward that you're giving away is greater than that friction you're asking them to do. Like if you're giving away a car, people are going to scan things to try and win that car. And as AR developers, you just have to be conscious of and campaign managers and other things at agencies. You've got to set those rewards higher than just an entertaining experience if you want to really blast through all that trouble of doing it on phones and tablets today.
Fair enough. And Alex, you mentioned, which I now use all the time, is the fact that, and I've got to quote the Flipper guy was saying this, which is that he used glass as it reduces the friction between intention and action. And I think it's a really good summary. And I don't necessarily think it necessarily is all for glass. I think any head-mounted display, any form of augmented reality, it just reduces that friction between intention and action. And I think it's an incredibly powerful.
Well, I think even if we think of the wearable devices like glass, I mean, there's an example of technology that already reduces a lot of the friction that comes from taking a mobile phone out of your pocket, loading it up, loading the app up, scanning it over an image. So already the wearable devices, I mean, I've seen in the past year, as someone who's looking at AR from a marketing point of view, I can see that obviously the technologies need to resolve themselves, but certainly the wearable technologies as opposed to the handheld mobile devices, which is where AR tends to reside at the moment from a marketing advertising platform, that it's already rapidly moving, I think, into the wearable device.
No, absolutely. Well, I'll tell you what, let's I've seen Howard, you've joined us. Hi Howard, by the way. I've been very rude not to say hi yet, but can you hear us okay? And
I can. I've been just as rude eating while I listen, but I'm almost done with that.
You've just been making me jealous, that's all. intensely jealous. But Howard, were you lucky enough to attend?
I was. It was actually my first year I attended. I've been going to the New York to the Arnie meetups for quite a while. And last year, I kind of come from an iPhone development background, and so I've been going out to Apple's WWDC the last few years. And last year, when I would have liked to go to AWE, I just couldn't swing both. But this year, I made a different choice.
Are you watching those programs? Are you watching television?
Yeah, but I want to mix
Love this. You get the kids involved. I have two, and they keep whenever I do these hangouts on air, they're always coming into my stuff.
Yes, after.
There we are. Just muted.
I'm going to text Patrick and tell him to mute. Oh, he did mute himself. Good.
Bless him. The amount of times I've done seriously important hangouts, and I have my 3.5-year-old and my 5-year-old literally going, "Dad, who's that?" And they start waving at the camera as I'm doing it. I'm going, "Oh, this is awful."
Well, I had to leave the conversation there for a second because my junior boy is doing a piano lesson. So if you hear some ivory twinkling in the background, you'll know what that is.
Probably a good time to do an advertisement for theboom.com.
Yes.
Theboom.com. When you want to make margaritas and have your 4-year-old run in on a conference call without the other people knowing it. Theboom.com.
It looks like this. I don't have my on right now, but because it's...
That thing has saved my ass more than anything else.
Yeah, mine has been Sugrued together because the build quality is not the best. But yes, it definitely has some great noise canceling capability.
You know, my kids are a little bit older now, and I have real life obstructions because I took their class yesterday, like an end of term little mini course thing on a tour of Google with a colleague I have there, and of a Google Glass camp that they take you from this area. I'm in New York, and if when you're getting tried on, and they were there with all their classmates, and after just looking around at all the cool, colorful stuff at Google and the free food, they decided they want to work there. And I'm actually back there tonight for a Cocoa Heads meeting, more on Mac development side, and they want to come with me to my Cocoa Heads meeting, thinking that it's still about looking at all the cool offices and eating the free food. But I think that might be even more disruptive than hearing kids chiming in the back of a Google Hangout.
Have you had the heart to tell them that not every company works like that?
I just want them to be excited enough, to be motivated enough to work for a company like Google and then support me, so we could turn the tables already. But yeah, no, I was there this year, and I thought it was great. And as I told Patrick at the time, I know Patrick from way back before augmented reality days, and then we've been colleagues on and off in the augmented reality world. And I'm not one that tends to look and goes only probably the last day that I decided to go all the tables with the eyewear. I tend to think more from kind of the software out and the applications out, and to the point where I've worked with a company where it really is appropriate to have a heads-up display like Glass or Vuzix, where it's really just reference information that you need real time to that you could get information from, and then have no visual obstruction with what you're doing. And then the other, and for that, something like Glass or Vuzix is perfect. And in the subject you said before of how do you get the older woman, I forgot how you describe the person that's just kind of the casual user that's not ready to invest in heavy technology. I think that the business for this, at least near term, is going to be when it's an industry, and when everyone in a giant box department store needs to wear these so that they could get quick information about both the products and the clients they're working with. And then all the women, like you described, and men coming into these stores are seeing everyone else using it and either frightened to death or impressed by how much they know because they're wearing it, and that's going to start interesting the consumer about it. But I think the first big push is going to be the people to whom their companies say they have to use it, and then have a compelling reason for it. But I think the fun, cool augmented reality stuff where you're really seeing stuff in 3D space that's tracking along with what you're really looking at, whether it's the car repair applications that are drawing lines and circles and places to cut, or the hot repair applications that are drawing lines and circles and places to cut. Those are going to need to be full field of view vision, where what you're seeing is the real and the augmentation. So to me, I'm kind of happy to wait and see which of the devices come to the front, and I don't tend to be one that gets as jazzed about figuring out which one is up to what, just because I'm more all about thinking about the application and the user experience.
One of the things that I didn't say at the conference, but which I do think will have an impact in terms of public consciousness and awareness of the technology, and it comes back to what Howard's saying, I think, is in the retail space. I think within the next 6 to 12 months we will see some major high street fashion retailers use this technology. I'm aware that Microsoft are working with some developers in space to create virtual mirrors, for example, that will fit in stores. Retailers are driving this heavily themselves because of the cost of being on the high street is very expensive. So they see AR as a way of reducing the amount of merchandise space that they need dramatically. And I think there's a lot of interesting stuff we're going to see soon in that space. And that's an area where consumers don't need to have a mobile phone, they don't need to buy any wearable device, etc. But they will still have an AR experience. And I think we'll see that as one of the sort of catalysts for more and more consumers saying, this is interesting, this technology, I've been able to use it in X fashion store to try on a dress in 7 different shades of color, for example, and that will build more awareness. So I'd actually say that we may see more awareness and adoption of AR by the consumers through that channel than through wearables, whereas Howard says, there's still a lot of uncertainty of who's going to win out and what type of devices are going to become more commonplace in terms of consumer adoption over the next, say, 2 to 3 years. I don't know what everyone thinks about that. Whether they think that's likely to happen, that you're going to see it retailers use this technology in the fashion that I've talked about.
I think it's got to be driven by an industry with a lot of power, and I think you've got travel, you've got retail, and those guys need the mass consciousness, and they have the ability to reach those people to get it out there. So I certainly. Yeah, I support that, Alex. I think it's interesting you mentioned about the lack of merchandise and that it means that they won't have to store as much. I do question, then what are they going to use that floor space for? Because, the shops aren't going to shrink.
Yeah, well, you see, when you have this almost reverse showrooming, is what some people talk about, for example, where retailers do know at the moment that a lot of consumers go into the store, they look at items, and then they exit the store and buy online, what's called showrooming. But I think some of the retailers, this is a debating point, of course, hope that by installing some of this technology, more and more consumers will be in the store environment, be able to, as it were, virtually try on products and close the loop as well. In other words, there and then, even with gestural control, for example. But maybe that's a little futuristic, but you're asking me what do they want to do with the space. The reality is they don't want as much space, James. It's just the retail imperative these days is, if you can, is to reduce your retail footprint, because you're spending so much of your profits on the space. So anything that can reduce the amount of retail space that that people have, they're looking at, and that's what interests me from a marketing point of view as well. Is you know, the ROI of AR may be about initially be about cost reduction rather than necessarily enhancing value to consumers per se.
Fair point.
I think, Alex, you had a great point on what was missing at the show, and I'm interested to see what other people thought wasn't there, either this year or in general and conspicuously. And a couple of things I noticed was there's not a lot of people under 30 there. It's really interesting how this is the technology of what's next, but with exception, there's it's mostly older folks who are like doing a lot of the company and development and things like that. There's no gaming companies per se there. There's no AR gaming other than Sulon that Alex mentioned. There's no portals there like Microsoft or Google. Yeah, the big boys here were Intel and Qualcomm, and then there wasn't really any headliner speaker folks. We don't get Sergey showing up and doing keynotes on what's going to happen with the AR stuff. So there's still a lot of things that have yet to break in this industry and at that show in particular. But I'm wondering what else wasn't there.
Anybody got a comment on that? Open capture.
They're all being very nice to the organisers.
It's very nice of you. And what I love about this is that everybody's opening capture.
There wasn't enough vegetarian food.
But I did notice on somebody captured a few of the Daiquiri team and commented that there were a few women at the conference. I mean, that's another one that was kind of very interesting to me. It was just how little female participation there was, both in terms of on the platform, but also in the audience as well. I mean, I remember even organising the conference here in Dublin. I made a conscious effort to make sure that I had a couple of female speakers. I didn't want it to be tokenism, but I think it's an interesting issue as well. It's a broader issue for the IT space. Why are there not so many women working in the space? Eliza?
It's a new factor, right? I will be the representative here on that one. I think a lot of it has to come down to with how new it is, and like you were saying, with the older generation being involved. I think this is a lot of people's mind for a long time now. You're playing and I know I am.
You're breaking up.
Yeah, AR for a long time and waiting for.
Eliza, we can't hear you.
Can you do me one small favour? On the top little banner where there's a little graph, can you just drop it down one level for me, just to make your bandwidth go down one level, and then I think your sound will be absolutely top again. And then, because I'm interested in your point here about the female participation. I think some.
How's my audio now?
There you go. That sounds good.
Is that a little bit better? Sorry about that. I think a lot of this, I'm a science fiction fan for many years, and I think this has been a thought in a lot of people's minds for many years now, and I think the Augmented World Expo is just the very beginning. This is the infancy of the technology, and I think as we see more people becoming active in this industry, I think we'll see more women joining aboard. So I really think that it's just one of those things of getting information out there, and people will be jumping on board. I know that there was another female developer that is highly active in the AR community that was taking part in the conference, and that was kind of neat to see. But I think you're right. I think we need to have more women involved in the AR community in general. You know, I just don't think that there's enough awareness out there that this community is growing right now.
Because let's be honest, I mean, let's just bring in your award on this, because I want to go into this about the. It's called an Oggy Award, is that right, or an Oggy? Oggy Award, sorry.
An Oggy.
Because we're talking here, and I'm looking now. So obviously there were 10
Dave has it up on his screen.
I actually took your video off, by the way. Ah, there you go. Let me blue box you. There you go, David. There you go. So, oh wow. That's the most interesting looking trophy I think I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, those are designed by Ori Imbar's wife.
Oh.
She's been doing them for 5 years running now.
They're all handcrafted.
Yeah, all handcrafted. She's an amazing artist. Although I think they may have this year done a 3D printing.
Yeah, there's been a few 3D prints of that sort of trophy stuff, isn't it? But the point I was going to make on this Oggy Award was that so get me if I'm right on this, David. So there was you, Liza. Then there was Leslie, which I presume was female Leslie rather than male Leslie, because we have male Leslies here. And then Cecile.
It was female.
Cecile? Cecile, is that male or female?
Female. Male.
Male.
Oh. We had Leslie is a female. Cecile is a male. So we had a total of 3 men on our team and 2 women.
There you go. So that's a good proportion. You're getting there. And tell us about the award. How did it go? What did you have to do? I mean, because excuse me for not understanding it or not knowing it, but can you tell us a little bit more?
Yeah. So the hackathon, we basically met up at 9 o'clock in the morning on Monday morning and formed teams. David and I had discussed joining ranks together the night prior, and then he had Cecile, and we added Leslie and Tim the morning of, kind of teamed up with them since they didn't have a team. And then we had actually come into the hackathon with a very particular idea about what we wanted to do, but given the amount of time in which we had to accomplish it, we changed directions. One of the judging criteria at the hackathon was to come up with a real-world use case scenario and to find a solution for it. And so that's kind of how we came up with the concept of HUD How-To, bringing documentation into a hands-free environment. And then basically we all just kind of put our skill set together, and everybody kind of has different skills, and just do as much as you can in about a 24-hour time period. So the next day at 3 o'clock we had to have our project submitted online with all of our information, and then the judging panel, I think there was approximately 20 different judges from all kinds of companies all over that took part in this.
I was very impressed with HUD How-To.
Thank you. We're going to continue with it.
Yeah, how many people were you competing against? Or teams? Or?
I think we had a total of 10 teams.
Was it 10?
10 teams, right?
I thought it was, yeah, on that order. I thought it was a dozen or 15, but...
What was it you liked about it, Patrick?
It seemed like more. The official report came back at 10.
Okay. Yeah, maybe some of the early ones bowed out eventually and didn't actually complete their project. No, I was impressed with the user experience. For me, it was just to describe a little bit of how it worked. You take an existing training video, for instance. It could be any how-to video. You upload it to a web server, and then it had this very nice intuitive interface. And I was kind of amazed you guys did this in a day, but you could just drag sliders over the video and kind of chop it up into like steps. And then I think there was a way you could also put like a text title of each step, and then that just that gets uploaded to the cloud, and then when you're viewing when you're in the eyewear, you can just swipe from step to step, and it was. Yeah, I thought it was really impressive. I thought it was just one of those things where less is more kind of thing. It was just very simple execution, but I could definitely see people using it because there's when we talked about friction earlier, Dave was talking about friction. I thought it was just a great way of reducing friction. There's existing video content out there, and it's just repurposing it in a really intuitive way.
And, and Liza, you just sent this through to me now, so I'm just screen sharing the website, which is hudhow2.com, right?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, if you look at business models going forward of what's really going to take traction through HMDs, it's the ability to do first-person point of view kind of instructions and push those to people's vision. It's one of the biggest models that's going to be out there, and Google figured it out too. They launched helpouts 6 months ago or so, and the ability to connect people to help them accomplish tasks and push those visuals to their site is just a beautiful experience. It's good stuff. So it was a good choice for the hackathon, and good job executing.
Yeah, I think a good example of that would be in the tourism space as well, which I said at the outset is my particular area, and Dave would be familiar with my interest in it. I think that anything that can, for example, enhance the tourist experience is something that adds value. And anything like you described there, Liza, is perfect, where you've got, for example, a video, which is a 5-minute video of a tourism destination, of which there's vast numbers of those out there, but you can actually turn that into something that people can, into nice bite-sized pieces as they go around, maybe aided by GPS systems. Perfect opportunity at low cost to create a really good tourism experience.
I hadn't considered the tourism market for this, but I think that sounds great.
Yeah, definitely. I would say there's an opportunity there. Yeah.
And
I think our application kind of brings up a good question as well. Is what do we do with the current content when it comes to eyewear? Do we need to can you just repurpose it and just using a low cost? Can we just redistribute it in a current format? Or do we have to create a whole new paradigm and create something new? So we're kind of be able to use existing content, and to create a whole new content just for the eyewear. I don't think that's just going to be any the near future solution. So I guess from a content developers and a UX perspective, there's something you probably want to watch out for is when you promise something to deliver something. I think from the eyewear perspective, content matters a lot. So when you're actually developing an application, you not only have to worry about how the application is going to function, but what type of content you're going to deliver as well, and that's going to determine the experience as well.
Yeah, David, that's a really good point. One of the projects that I'm working on with the Manchester Metropolitan University and the City Council is a tourist trail based around a heritage trail, and we've done some research already using a PhD candidate. And one of the findings that we have is that what the user requires is often much less elaborate than what technology or indeed creative artists might want to create. So, for example, the prototype we've been developing, consumers want navigation. They want to know where they are, how they can get to key points. They also want very basic information about what they're looking at. For example, if it's a statue, who created the statue, when was it erected, and a couple of other bits of information. And one of the things that I'm finding more and more is that can we look at repurposing existing content, which is what makes what Liza's done really interesting, because I'm working on a project where for one point on the heritage trail we're looking at potentially creating content that might cost tens of thousands of dollars, where you're creating purpose-built content using holographic imagery, bringing in actors, etc., etc. When the evidence is that might add 5% more utility to tourists, but you're only able to do it for a fraction of the trail. So what Liza's demonstrating, I'm going to follow up with you, Liza, is that you may have created something that I think could very quickly and efficiently enable an experience for consumers that satisfies 90% of what they would want anyway. Stunned silence.
Yeah. I think, Liza, are you still there? Are you still with us?
Oh, that's a pity.
Yeah, sorry, I had to run to the front door. No, I had to run to the front door to get a UPS sign.
Okay. Well, Liza, I was singing your praises. We'll follow up again, but just making the point that the technology or the solution that you've won the Augie for is one that I think has huge opportunity in tourism, because when I'm looking at AR and tourism on a project I'm working at the moment, one of the biggest barriers is the real cost of developing new content, new form content, whether it be audio, video, using 3D models, involving actors and green screens, all that sort of stuff. Whereas what you have is already out there in the internet, namely vast amounts of video and audio about tourism destinations, and you're developing an opportunity that makes it more accessible using an AR device. So it's very interesting.
Thank you. We had a lot of fun doing this too.
I wound up sitting. Well, I have a comment about that, and then I realized back to when you were asking what was missing, and it's not choices of Ori's or anything. It's just what was missing in the exhibition hall that surprised me. But just a comment to the hackathon is I showed up, I guess, afternoon of the first day. It's just when I flew in. And the second day I was planning, I was auditing Patrick's tutorial session and then attending one of the other tutorial sessions. But I wound up spending all my afternoon in the hackathon room just doing some coding I had to do and just being in the environment. And it really was exciting. I remember seeing Liza and David and other people around, a couple of actually pretty young people, like you were saying, you didn't see a lot of young people kind of near me working on a cool three-dimensional version of asteroids and actually hitting me up for some C# advice, and I was hitting them up for some graphics advice, and it was a very congenial, collegial atmosphere there. So I actually thought that was great. It was a great way to meld into the conference. But aside from that, what I was surprised personally, I have a client or just someone I know from here who I've spoken with about what I do, and I've told him about the augmented reality stuff along the lines of you look in a room and you can see where furniture might be, and you can move furniture around and be able to, virtually lay out a room, which would go back to that story of saving real estate space of all these furniture stores that we see that just have blocks and blocks of space in their building just so that they could set up every possible living room. But what I spoke with this guy about, he's interested in possibly using an AR solution for expo, trade show booths themselves, which you've seen in some videos, where the kind of things where just have interesting stuff going on that cause people to gather around. And these days, just like the ones we see with it's like flowers flying, like bumblebees flying off of flowers that are targets on the side of your booth. So people are going ooh and ah and gathering around, and it attracts attention and people come over. That's a nice step. The nicer step is when what they're seeing is also actually, germane to the product you're trying to talk about. I mean, this guy's in biomed, and there's a lot of money there, and there's a lot of science there, but no one's doing this. And I was actually surprised that there was no one, which makes it something I might want to do next year at AWE, that there was no one in the AWE exhibition hall that was using cool AWE stuff to gather people around. Maybe with the exception of the big giant Epson or IBM thing that was happening in the middle where people were clearly looking at cool stuff that was happening.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point that you make, Howard. Just if I might again refer back to the conference that I was putting together in Dublin, and James and I know Dave, who were there, will probably attest to this, that it was really interesting. Dacry were there from the States as an exhibitor, and the vast majority of the audience had never seen AR, and they literally were like, bees round honey as Dacry showed them some of the stuff, the 40 elements, the blocks that they have, the elements blocks, etc. I mean, with Dave and myself have had this conversation before, that there's a vast opportunity around conferencing and events to use it as an attractor, which we're seeing, for example, with companies like Cadbury and Pepsi in the UK use it as a kind of, I'll use the word gimmick, as a means of building attention. But then beyond that, as you say, Howard, it has to be germane, it has to fit the brand proposition, the brand values in some fashion. So, for example, Pepsi with their bus shelter, which I'm sure all of you are familiar with, that one that they ran in London, it was really about the consistency of the unbelievable and the extraordinary, and that was consistent with the brand, and it had a lot of virality. So, I mean, I think that's a really interesting space to watch, is using AR as anyone who studied marketing talks about the AIDA principle: awareness, interest, desire, action. AR is a technology that can be really strong in building awareness, but there has to be more.
Yeah, I agree with you entirely, and I think it's funny enough, it's a word we use a lot here, which is experiential. The world of experiential marketing is growing and growing and growing, and once you get the consumer interested in cool things, and that Pepsi bus shelter ad, I mean, that's gone a long, long way, and I've got to just for 1 second, because it's I think Patrick's new Google Glass frames are actually better than the.
Oh wow, they look great, Patrick.
They're beautiful. Well, I tell you what, look, we haven't got a lot of time because I'm conscious of everybody's time. But one of the things I do want to do is just talk about the keynotes. I mean, there was an awful lot of speeches there. I mean, 160 speakers. I think there were 3 keynotes. I think, Alex, you said that Robert Scoble
stood out for me. Yeah, just his ability to talk about the context of AR. Now, I missed half of the other both the other ones. I was on the floor itself, so I'd love to hear the rest of the contributors here what they thought of the other keynotes.
Did you guys catch them?
Unfortunately, I think David and I were so busy with the hackathon, neither one of us were able to go to any of the keynotes. So
I caught a couple of them. I thought Tish Schutz was really interesting. I thought she brought up a really great point. Her talk was all around empathy, and I think that as an industry, empathy and thinking about the needs of both the user of what we're building as well as the people around them. I think it may have been actually you, Dave, that maybe we were speaking in the hall after that about like with Google Glass, a lot of the backlash has not come around people wearing them, but the people who are around people wearing them. So Google didn't necessarily think through the issues of who's going to be interacting with people that are using our product. And so I think that one stood out to me, Tish's talk. And then also, I'm forgetting his first name for some reason, Ishii from MIT. Hiroshi, yeah. Amazing. Just, I mean, the takeaway from there, not only was it just amazing to see the technology and what they've done with physical interfaces and AR, but his takeaway at the end was basically, again, kind of along the lines of empathy. Just what are you going to leave for people 200 years from now? What are you as an industry, what are you as an individual going to do to affect change that people 200 years from now will really still engage with? And I thought that was pretty mind-blowing. But yeah, I thought that just the overall quality of the keynotes, the ones that I was able to catch, and of course, I think they're all available on YouTube. And Dave, I think you put a link there. Just some really great content this year.
I think that's sorry, go on, Howard.
No, saying I like Ishii's speech as well, and again the whole thing on empathy and the context speech, and I find this is just the next technology for developing useful apps or implementations for people and businesses. And I think it then boils down again to the user experience and to what you're accomplishing for them. I think when we talk about all the gimmick stuff we see, like okay, you pointed out a picture of a flower and you see butterfly flittering around it. It looks really, really cool. And now you could wave your hand and it makes the butterfly do something, and it's still cool. I think Patrick's probably heard me say this too many times, that to me it's the original iPhone apps that people would go nuts because you could hold what looked like anyone else, like a phone, and now you could turn it sideways and it looked like you were pouring milk out of a container or that popcorn was popping in it. It was just basic visual stuff, but it was actually in a screen on your phone. Oh my gosh. And it was the coolest thing. And so everyone had to get that app, and everyone had to get an iPhone. And now people want to get into this stuff because you're actually seeing magical things in 3D space. And it's like that video, Patrick, of yours that you have attached to your card, your placard thing. And it's just you're seeing stuff really happening before your eyes that seems magical and interesting. But that will keep people interested. But it's not what's going to make it. That's not what's going to make all of us able to monetize it, or change the world, or do interesting scientific things. It's when people are really looking into the usability and the experience, like anything else.
I think you touched on a great point too. One of the things that's happened this year that was new is the awareness of these applications into the environment around them, whether it's using SLAM or using the Tango type IR mapping kind of environments or other things. But really AR is coming to the real world, and that's going to grow up a lot over the next 12 months. And next year you'll see whole room AR instead of tabletop stuff in front of you. And so really environmental stuff. The Catzoom guys, the Wikitude, talked to a lot of the engine folks about what's next, like what little API or SDKs do they add to their platforms. And this environmental kind of AR and stuff out in the street, looking around a city, things like that. Those are going to grow up, and they'll be there. They'll be there as well next year.
Yeah, I think that was one thing that really blew me away. But I'm not a tech person. When I went in to see the Sulon technology, just the way that it's able to, 3D map a room in one tenth of a millisecond, I think they quoted it as, and present a really interesting experience. And I could just see, as Dave suggests, they're not just a room, but an entire city, a street. You can imagine how the applications and where we've come to already is quite dramatic. I think in the space of even the last 2 years. But give it another year, we're going to see a huge growth in that space, the 3D mapping allied. So this mixed reality as well, more and more of the AR and the ability to be flexible, I think, is interesting. That was discussed by a couple of people earlier, this idea of some of the eyewear being one that allows you to have an entirely virtual and or an augmented or mixed reality experience. I think that's probably one thing we'll see more and more of.
The Sulon stuff was amazing. I mean, amazing from the standpoint that it was rudimentary in things, but it really represents what's coming. And I was thinking that there would be more gaming companies coming to this AR show, but it might just be that AR will go to things like E3 and Game Developer Conference, things like that. It's probably more likely that when the big guys get in, it's just going to, real-world gaming is going to become a part of the mainstream gaming, and the AR show will be more of the industrial, commercial, technology, and for example, this year was the first year that they held a computer vision conference next to the thing, and walking around that was another mind blower with the amazing kinds of algorithmic control that we're going to be able to have in these AR apps through the camera and computer vision and image recognition and analysis kind of side of things. That's all growing up at a incredible clip as well.
Yeah, that was one of the exhibitors. I can't remember at that ancillary show, Dave. Maybe you remember the name, but they had a piece of technology that allows it would be installed in a car, which basically recognized human form, so that it would affect. It's not Google car, but it's using 3D mapping and image recognition to effectively identify dangers and human hazards, if I can call it that. But it was remarkable how much that technology seems to have evolved in the recent years.
Yeah, the embedded system stuff, that's going to be coming on.
But can I just not beg the question about the gaming side? Because is the reason the gamers are not attending, is that not just purely a principle of the fact that they are looking at VR as a better space for gaming than AR?
I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I think it depends on the type of gaming, and I also think that the devices for AR are too immature probably to make a great game for AR, but it's coming. I think it's probably easier to make a good game for VR because you've got complete control over the visual system of the end user, the gamer. And it's not as big a leap to go from you're immersed looking at a screen sitting at your desk to you're immersed sitting at your desk with a thing on your face. So I don't know that it's necessarily that it's the VR games are going to be more fun in the long run than AR games. I think the jury's still on that, but I do think I think it is probably easier to make a VR game nowadays.
It's also friction, right? So the friction of looking at a game and poking at your iPad to make the aliens go away is completely different than, again, Mayo armbands, bam, 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 and fragging ninjas or something. So it really just we're missing a key component in this whole industry with real world markup tools. And the analogy is that the first web didn't take off until we had these WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get kind of authoring tools to mark up pages that became the web. And we had 135 sites that exploded to what it is today in the early days. And we're exactly at the same location, except we still don't have these what you see is what you get draw tools of AR objects, videos, content, text, models, animations, effects, all that kind of stuff. And that's the next round of software development with these markup tools that will bring this into, again, frictionless kind of eyewear experiences where now it's just game on and you can play. Yeah. That's when the AR gaming is really going to take off. But
I did see, Dave, and you were mentioning Sulon as well, that they have their piece of kit already does allow you to have this to switch easily between a totally virtual environment and an augmented environment. I thought the augmented game that they had put in place in that room that I was trying it out was pretty impressive, in fairness.
Yep. Yeah. It was a great little taste of what's coming.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man,
I was kind of hoping
so
to see Google make a present.
Yeah.
With the if it comes to a heads, well, I was hoping that Google was going to make a presence with Ingress, because once Ingress comes to heads-up displays like Google Glass, I think you're going to see a large explosion in users in the gaming environment with augmented reality.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Okay.
All right. Well, look, I tell you what. I think, I mean, we've been running just over the hour mark, and it's very rude of me to carry on over that. But I mean, it's very selfish because I'm enjoying the discussion and I'm enjoying listening to stuff that I didn't see, and the jealousy is only ramping up as I continue. But to be honest, I mean, there's two things which I think I've taken from this, and I try and always sum up conversations in a few words. And for me, I sort of pick up very much that you guys feel that AR has evolved an awful lot in the last year or so, and you say it's grown up, and I think that's a very powerful thing to say. I mean, if it's grown up in a year, I mean, heaven knows where we're going to be next year. You know, across in a year's time, I mean, Glass will be commercially available. Vuzix will be, that'll be the year and a half in. There'll be others. I mean, in theory, Oculus should be launched, but it's not AR, it's VR. So, but the reason I'm mentioning it is because it means that the public perception of this sort of technology will be far greater than what it is now. When, you know, we're all sitting here talking about it all, infusing about it, but Mrs. Smith from Hull, who's 55 years old, doesn't really know about it and understand its application yet. So, you know, maybe in a year's time, the AR conference will be totally different to what it is now. So there's certainly the word grown up has come out of this. And for me, in the latter stages, friction and frictionless, I think, again, is so very important to all of this getting on. Because, you know, all of us here on this panel are probably very, very willing to put up with technology. And because we have a want to understand it and a need to understand it, we are more willing to be patient with it. What most of these consumers out there, they want to put something on and it works. They want to turn it on and it works. And I think this aspect of friction is so very important for all of these companies to understand and take on board. And I can't wait to see what's coming up next. I really can't. And I'm sure you guys can't either. So let me finish that there as a live broadcast. I'm going to press the stop broadcast button. For you guys on the film strip, by all means, spend a couple of minutes afterwards just debriefing, and we'll go from there. But thank you ever so much for joining me. It's been a great pleasure.
Thanks for having us.
James, thanks for setting it up.
Yeah, thanks, James.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it was great.